For 63 days now, I've woken up in the morning every day with the same image in my head. It's a skinny Hongkonger, about the same height as me, with glasses, a guy who's quite shy but who has a steely look in his eye, a guy who I know pretty well, and a guy who I love. This is what comes to mind when I think of him. This is what's in my mind's eye. I think of his room. I think of a fan on full blast. I think of posters on the wall and flags on the wall that are fluttering in the breeze. I think of a gaming chair engulfing him like some kind of throne. I think of a phone going off all hours of the day and all hours of the night, and him never sleeping because he always responded to it. I'm talking about Andy Lee. Andy Lee, a man who was completely committed to the cause of freedom and democracy in Hong Kong. But it didn't start out that way. Andy Lee was like so many of you. Andy Lee was a guy who had his entire life before him, a guy whose career was very promising. He was a guy who was an expert computer technician. And like many in his generation as well, he was a guy who was having to deal with the bitter fruits of colonialism and all of their consequences handed to his generation by us. It didn't start out that way with Andy Lee. He wasn't a born campaigner. He didn't choose it. It chose him. And let me be clear. Andy Lee is a quiet hero. He never chose the limelight. He never pushed himself forward. He was willing to allow his face and his name to be associated with this campaign because nobody else wanted to do it. He never sought interviews. He never promoted himself. He did it as a sacrifice. That's the man that I know, and many of you might know, in Andy Lee. So where is Andy Lee now? Because this is sounding like a eulogy. Andy Lee is not dead, as far as we know. Andy Lee is in prison in Shenzhen, and he is not alone. He's with 11 others, 11 other freedom fighters from Hong Kong. The Hong Kong 12. Collateral in a clash of value systems. Why am I saying that? Because while Beijing may break its promises to Hong Kong wantonly, may lie, steal, spy, and cheat, they are not the only people who made promises to Hong Kong. Who else made promises to the people of Hong Kong? The UK! And what were those promises? Those promises were guaranteed by treaty that is supposed to be safeguarded and implemented and followed up by the United Nations. What were those promises? To uphold the autonomy of Hong Kong, to defend the way of life of the people of Hong Kong, to defend the human rights of the people of Hong Kong. Nothing. What use are those promises if the UK will not try to defend the human rights of the Hong Kong 12? What use are those promises? What use are they if kids can be extradited to mainland China, where they find themselves in prison with no recourse to their own legal practitioners, with no contact to their families, with no medical attention, with no hope of due process? What kind of promise is that? So I came here today to say one thing. These promises, from the UK's point of view, are being defaulted upon. We promised to the people of Hong Kong to defend your way of life and your human rights. If we cannot protect the Hong Kong 12, we are not living up to our treaty obligations. So what I want to say to you all is this. You have built the most creative, ingenious, efficient movement for democracy this century has seen, and possibly longer than that. It is time for this movement to turn its attention to the promises that it was made by the international community and the United Kingdom. If your authoritarian rulers back home are going to stonewall your requests, ignore your demands, lie and cheat, you must remember that there are other nations who made promises to you too. The UK made promises to you, and it must honor them. We're at a critical stage in this movement. As your city is squeezed, your spirit will feel like it wants to falter, and the forces of division will come amongst you. You must now resist them, rise above them, and turn the wisdom and beauty of this movement towards those who made you promises and must honor them. Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson, free the Hong Kong 12. Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson, free the Hong Kong 12, free Andy Lee. Fight for freedom! Fight for freedom!